So I think we need to start things off a little bit seriously this episode. We usually do a little goofy thing at the beginning, where, I'm going to pretend to explode or something in some way. But
yeah, this is our YouTuber apology, guys.
yeah, this is a bit of a egg on face moment, I suppose, for us. Yeah. So
one of our known associates, Joseph Joestar, Josh, I don't think I have the heart to tell him. I think you need to.
Yeah. So we've been covering this show, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, covering the whole Joestar bloodline, right? And for a long while, everybody kind of assumed that they were just like, this long-running family of vampire hunters, essentially, and that they were saving the world and doing all this great stuff. But recently, a quote resurfaced from Joseph Joestar, who is still alive, apparently. Like, he's still around and kicking. And he tweeted out a few years ago. Let me pull this up. Yeah, so I have the tweet. I
haven't seen this yet.
It says, I thought Rudolf von Stroheim, one of the leaders of the Nazi party. Yeah, real piece of shit, that guy. But let me finish the quote. I thought Stroheim was a coward at first, but when the going gets tough, his bravery shines through. We may subscribe to different beliefs, but I respect Stroheim's courage. End tweet. Which, I don't know what to say. I mean, the dude's 104 now. Like he's getting up there.
It's impressive that he has a Twitter account. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, but still, I don't know.
Right? Not the abject condemnation of a Nazi that you would hope for.
Yeah, it just kind of comes at a bad time. I think that, with the state of politics being as they are, I think we just kind of have to say out loud that while we are covering JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and we're going to probably say a lot of things that are positive about the Joestar family and Joseph specifically, we don't associate with Nazis. We're not cool with them. We're pretty universally against them.
You seen that video of that guy who does the spin kick on the lady who's like protesting on the corner?
I have not seen this.
I'll do that to a Nazi.
Yeah. And just so you know, we're not getting paid to say anything like this. This isn't like an anti-Joestar thing. We're just.
This is not. This is not an ad by Big Dio.
We just need to let you know that we are not supporting them in any way whatsoever. Right?
I will continue to support the Joestars. You've seen the show. Circumstances demanded that he party himself with these people, and I think this bit is going on too long. I think we should talk about the show.
I was gonna lead into a whole thing where I was like, this episode is sponsored by WAMU.
Oh my god.
How y'all doing? My name is Josh.
My name's Brogan. Welcome to the podcast.
Yep, welcome to How to Otaku. This is a show where we cover anime. We're talking JoJo's Part 2 this time. We didn't get any responses from anybody about JoJo's Part 1, unfortunately.
People don't like JoJo's.
They just don't like it. That's all we can glean from the fact that nobody responded to us, is that nobody likes the show.
Nobody likes JoJo's, and it's really damn unfortunate that we're locked into 6 more episodes on this.
We're the only JoJo's defenders, you see. We're the only ones.
We're the only people who like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. There's nobody else on the planet.
Yeah, nobody's going to go to the Q&A section on Spotify or email us and tell us what they think about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. They just won't.
That actually, and unless I'm corrected, unless somebody clarifies otherwise, this is the current #1 running JoJo's fan podcast. And Hirohiko Araki owes me just a thought. He doesn't have to send me anything. He doesn't have to do anything for me. Just like be aware of me.
Yeah, but I'm challenging you, the listener. I'm challenging you to a duel. Okay, in the Coliseum of discourse. Okay, you have to send us your thoughts on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2 specifically. Though I mean, you can send anything you like, but JoJo's Part 2 specifically.
Imagine
that's what we
saying
want.
that to Pluto, as in yes, that Pluto, and he just rips his fucking tunic off and flexes at you and says, "Shut up, nerd."
Is that what happens? Is that what happens in Kingdom Hearts? Because Pluto, the okay.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I got it. I was just like, wow, this is already such a fucking this is already such an eclectic joke I'm making that like one person might understand, and you're gonna throw a Kingdom Hearts reference into the mix too. We're gonna fuck it up. It's a good episode.
The people who understand Kingdom Hearts and the people who understand classical philosophy, pretty small intersection. If only there were more Spark Kingdom Hearts fans. Anyways, let's talk JoJo's. Let's talk JoJo's. So, when we last left off, Jonathan Joestar had sacrificed himself to destroy Dio, the vampire god, who was trying to take over the planet, essentially. Irina was left with just herself, the baby in her womb that Jonathan left her, and this other baby that's with her now. And we flash forward 100 years, and now we've got Joseph Joestar, the son of George Joestar, who is Irina's kid.
We're not going to talk about the baby on the boat, Josh. We're not going to talk about the baby on the boat.
No, the baby on the boat is important.
Welcome back. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast where we try and determine whether or not the baby on the boat is George Joestar.
No, they clear this up. The baby on the boat is Elizabeth Joestar.
No, Elizabeth. Yes.
Right, Elizabeth
Yes.
Joestar.
So the baby on the boat gets adopted.
Mm-hmm. By Streisel.
By Streitzo, yes.
Yes. And that's Elizabeth, who later marries George Joestar, and they have Joseph Joestar, the protagonist of this series, who positively, I will say, is introduced to us by beating the shit out of some cops.
Beating the shit out of some cops. Fuck those cops. They were harassing a little black boy. And, Josh, we're not getting away from the problematic allegations right now because the little black boy's name is Smokey.
Yeah, Smokey Brown, to be honest. Portmanteau of Smokey Robinson and James Brown. And then this is so fucking hilarious. The last thing that happens in the season is they're like, Smokey went back to his hometown in Georgia and became a mayor. And it's like, dude,
what? Fuck it. I would love to live in the town that has Smokey Brown as its mayor.
Does Rocky think that all black people come from the South? I have to know if he thinks that.
I have to assume because, well, shit. Josh, in part 7, there's a character named Poco Loco, and his stand is Hey Ya.
Oh, fuck.
We'll get there later. He's also from Georgia, and a black man.
Yeah. It was the 80s, okay, and he was in Japan.
Right. We have to. If we're gonna talk about that stuff, we should address. It was 1980, and this is a Japanese man writing this.
Yeah.
So his context for all of that.
Yeah, is a little bit lesser.
American race relations and also what the Nazis were and did.
Yeah.
Japan doesn't get a whole lot of education on the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Even to this day, they don't. That's where you get kind of this bleed in of, oh, well, we have a Nazi, but he's a good guy. Like,
yeah. I recognize that that's like a bit of a barrier, so I don't hold it too much against him, but like, it makes the show a little harder to watch as an American.
As an American, it definitely makes it like it's a really weird pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But exactly, I can't really hold it against Iraqi personally, you know.
Yeah.
Especially now in 2024, where I haven't really seen that kind of stuff continue in his work, and he is still writing. You know, I won't get into it because he develops a lot as a person in his understanding of things like that. But in 1980. At the time,
we need to get back on track. So the setup for this is that Irina and Joseph Joestar are visiting New York City from the UK where they live.
Yes.
Which I didn't pick up on at first. I was reading through the JoJo's wiki and found that out, and I was like, oh, so they're not living in America.
No, they do not. They are not Americans, which is why Joseph still has a British accent.
Even though the Japanese VO does not do the English accent, thankfully.
What? Oh, no, you watch it in Japanese.
But
thank you very much.
But anyway, so Jonathan kind of like helps Smokey after the cops start trying to fuck him up, and like I think like 6 months or something like that passes, and you know he's essentially been pseudo adopted by the family, right? And they're all still in America. Very long vacation, I suppose. You know, though they're rich as fuck.
They got old money.
Yeah, they got old money.
They got old English money.
Parallel to this, Speedwagon and now in old age, and Strizo now in old age, are now investigating an Aztec ruin, which is connected to the stuff that happened with Dio Pryor and the mask.
With the stone mask specifically. So there was an ancient civilization in South America where these pillar men, as they're called, because get this, they're men and they found them in a pillar. But they rock up. They were basically the dudes, or in relation to the dudes that made the stone mask that gives people vampire powers. Somehow. Yeah. They don't really explain it, but ancient civilization of immortal South Americans did it.
Yeah.
So we are now introduced to our primary antagonists of JoJo's Part 2. AC/DC. WAMU. Cars. And Santana. And WAMU is the only one that I put any sauce on. That's Wham, if you didn't catch it.
Yeah.
So, yes. These pillars of the American rock institution. Yeah. We're going to fight these pillars.
Now, I have a question. Did you watch the sub or the dub?
So, I've watched Part 2 probably a dozen times. I've seen both.
Okay. So what's weird about the sub, which is what I watched, is that they give Santana a different name. And I think that there's a couple other instances of that where they're like...
They give a lot of people different names for, like, rights and registration purposes.
Yeah, but then there are some that are, like, straight up, like, Robert E.O. Speedwagon. Right. You know, not subtle in the slightest.
Well,
you know.
And so it's even weirder watching the dub, because in the dub, they will say... Or, sorry, in the sub, they will say... Like, they will just say the name, but, like... in Japanese, like Romanized, basically. But in the subtitles, it'll say the different English, like, localized name.
Yeah, so just to let everybody know, when we're talking about Santana, we're talking about San Viento, as he's called in the text of the subtitles. So just letting you know. But those are the four pillar men. So Strizo was like, I want to be a mortal fucker. I'm getting old. I don't want to die, man. You know, so he gets the mask and he turns himself into a vampire, kills everybody except Speedwagon.
Yes. In the research facility where they find the Pillar Men.
Yeah, exactly. And then he goes after the Joestars because they're the last people who know about this. Yeah. And who could actually pose a threat to him. So
he attacks Joseph on the streets of New York. There's a lot of cool homage in the first several episodes of part 2. Like when he's fighting the cops, the Coke bottle trick is really neat. How he pops the cap on the Coke bottle using hormone to like break the cop's finger. And we get it some in this fight too, where Joseph's a little bit of a trickster. Joseph's a little bit of a rat boy. He's not the same straight shooter like Jonathan was. He's a little bit of a conniving little goon. Yeah. Like he uses the shot glass trick to try and like revert the bloodstream bullets that are getting shot at him. He somehow tricks this guy into looking in a mirror and just fighting a mirror for 5 minutes. And then he pulls 14 fucking grenades out of his trench coat. Like, guy's a goofball. And he's gonna let you know.
He definitely has a, like an idiot savant energy, right? It's always left a little ambiguous whether or not he's always planning everything, like, from the start, or if he's improvising and just taking credit for it, but, like... Either way,
he has this uncanny ability of foresight where he can tell people what their next words are.
Yeah, I love that. That is just like it always gives you the sense that he's in the upper hand. Even though like you can tell that occasionally he just fucks up and that he's just got to like, you know, fight his way out of it.
But when he has the upper hand, he won't even let you know. He'll know he has the upper hand, and he'll fuck around for about 5 minutes until exactly what he is looking for is ready. Yeah. And then he'll just dive on it.
But, I don't know. In some ways, I like him better than Jonathan Joestar, just because of all that. And, like, you know, how much more of an interesting character he is than Jonathan. But at the same time... Whenever he interacts with a woman, it's never fun.
Yeah. You know, as much as Jonathan was the, like, you know, a prime example number 1 of chivalry and like a gentleman.
Yeah.
Joseph is a womanizer. Joseph is he's a little fucking street rat. He's a goon. He's
and even by the end, that doesn't change, right?
That doesn't change at all. No.
He gets married to Susie Q and like immediately starts chasing her around because they get into some argument.
Right. I mean, we'll get into it later, but it doesn't even stop there. He cheats on his wife with some woman he meets in Japan and has a child in Japan.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Joseph's not the best guy, but he's a real good dude.
Yeah, but, so he defeats Strizo, and then in the process of that, Strizo tells him about the Pillar Men.
Yes.
And so he goes to Mexico to investigate. And this is when we get introduced to the greater cast of characters for this season. Most importantly, well, not most importantly, Stroheim.
We're kind of glossing over a monumental moment in JoJo's history, Josh. The first crossdresser.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that does happen.
And it works out brilliantly. He walks right up to the gate. He's wearing a dress. He looks incredibly feminine. You know, if
he looks great.
She flirted with me, I might go for it. But these two German gentlemen that are posted up at the gate front don't go for it.
Yeah, they see right through.
They see right through it. And the answer to that is... time to fight. He just beats him up and goes on in.
The other thing is that like he has this Hamon ability without any this battle tendency, if you will.
He has this tendency.
Anyways, he has this inclination towards Hamon without even training in it, which I think suggests that is somewhat genetic, right?
Right. It is definitely passed down primarily through the Joestar bloodline. You don't see a whole lot of other Hamon users. Even the ones that you see, you get the sense that they're like, these people live on the fringe of the world. They are in they are in their whole own world here that they've developed. Like, they're like 6 dudes that know Hamon, and they're all right here.
Yeah, and one of them is Joestar, the other one is Zeppeli, and it's, you know.
Right. One of them is a Joestar, one of them is a Zeppeli. Where have I seen this before?
Yep.
But yeah, so you get the meeting between Joseph and the Pillarmen initially, and not Stroheim.
Stroheim.
And this leads us into Italy, where he meets
Caesar Zeppeli.
Caesar, that's right.
Also known as Cheesa, if you watch the sub.
Cheeser.
Cheese. Have you seen the Cheesa meme?
Yeah, of course I have.
If you're not aware of this, there's a great meme that puts Caesar's death in a very different context.
There's a lot of there's a lot of those. There's just any clip you've ever seen of anybody getting crushed by anything. Somebody has edited blonde hair onto the person getting crushed, and then Joseph going, Jesus!
But you did kind of skim over like the whole like Mexico research facility they have.
The Red Gym of Aja.
Yeah, which is like it's all very like Indiana Jones coded. This whole run is, you know, it's very, you know, hopping across the world, lots of Nazi imagery, and and just trying to like stop this overwhelming power from being in the wrong hands. It's all very, adventure film of that sort. But I do appreciate that they at least introduce Stroheim as a really shitty person, right?
Right.
Like
they come right out the bats. Like, Stroheim is obviously not a good dude.
I
mean, they butt heads. They don't even butt heads. They get in, like, they start off like fighting this guy.
Mm-hmm. But even before that, it's like he's got all these Mexicans in captivity, and he sacrifices them to cars.
Right.
In order to
sacrifice.
No, not cars.
To
Santana. Mm. Santana's the first one. I got that mixed up. But yeah, he sacrificed them to Santana. I think it's important initially to do that because he does become a pseudo ally towards the end, and it's important to have that context so it's a little more like, enemy of my enemy is my friend, rather than, I'm working with the Nazis.
Right. As hard as we jumped on that at the very beginning,
yeah,
I think Araki, frames it as well as he can. He didn't just throw Nazis into, like,
yeah,
it makes sense. The Nazis were very, superstitious people. I mean, obviously, yeah. Like, they had a lot of dealings in South America. It is not unrealistic for them to be doing some weird experiments to try and raise an ancient race of people to fight alongside them to claim world domination. That is not beyond the Nazis, like, in real life at all. They were doing shit like that.
Yeah.
It just leaves a bad taste in your mouth to say allied with the Nazis.
Yeah, especially at the end when it's like Stroheim died a valiant death in battle, and you're like, God damn it,
very
we could have
courageous man.
we could have just said Stroheim fucked off and died. The end.
We may have different beliefs. Different beliefs is doing a lot of weightlifting in that sentence.
It is
a lot.
Yeah, but that sequence is important because, like, it does set up his allyship as, well, first of all, like, more of a means to an end than just working with a Nazi, but also, like, he, for all of his faults, he is a very, like, smart and dedicated person.
He is. I mean, and realistically, at the end of the day, in a situation where you have ancient immortal demigods,
Yeah.
you might have to team up with a Nazi.
Yeah. And it poses an interesting kind of conflict because, like, well, I don't want to say that, like, the Pillar Men are like an analogy for Nazis. There's a similar level of, like, we're superior to you guys, so we're gonna destroy you kind of thing going on.
Right.
And it's interesting that they draw a bit of a parallel to that and to the Nazis and say, like, you know, the only difference between, I mean, like, the thing that makes the Nazis different in this scenario is that they're the ones getting shit on, you know? Like, I think it's a little bit interesting of a bit of a parallel to draw there.
It is. I've always kind of been in the camp of just like, we'll tuck that in the corner of like should have been left in the past, and I'm not really gonna think about it that much. But I mean, talking about it, you're absolutely right. I mean, it does. He does a lot of he puts in. He being Iraqi puts in a lot of effort to kind of like ask some interesting questions about it at the very least. He's not. It is not thrown in there for no reason whatsoever. It poses moral challenges to the viewer and to the characters themselves. I've always kind of just tucked it away and felt weird about it, just because it doesn't ask those questions as explicitly as I would feel like should be necessary. But again, this is my, post-2000 lifetime of being an American and, growing up knowing exactly what the Nazis did and how terrible Nazis are, and dealing now with the American resurgence of self-proclaimed neo-Nazis. Yes, it's just like it puts a bad taste in my mouth that he doesn't condemn, and I get it, but I've always just kind of like tucked that part away.
It's just a different time and place thing, but like I did draw that parallel, and I thought that was interesting. But they have that fight where Santana is fighting Stroheim and Joseph, and they eventually succeed in like throwing him down a well, and
they put him in the hole.
Yeah, and the sun reflects in such a way where it's hitting him from both top and bottom from the reflection in the water, and that takes him out. And so it's like, okay, we can defeat a Pillar Man, but this happened through like such extreme circumstances that how are you going to take care of these other guys now?
Right, we've got 3 more to worry about.
Yeah, who are being revived on the other side of the world in Italy by a different group of Nazis.
Right.
So they essentially, so Joseph and Speedwagon, who is revealed to be still alive, they all go over to Italy, and that's where we meet the 2 other important allies in this, Caesar and Lisa. Which the Caesar-JoJo relationship is pretty
it's enemies to friends.
Yeah, it's enemies to friends,
enemies
but
to lovers almost.
Yeah, it gets pretty close. I appreciate that, like, that anime tends to be a little bit more willing to like show deep, intimate relationships between 2 men, like it's even if it's not explicitly romantic, it's like, I fought beside you and I have this deep trust of you, and like I'm gonna avenge you when you die and cry at your grave. It's that sort of thing, that I think more Western media is still a little bit scared of,
Right. I mean, like, even I never thought I would say this, Josh. Let's talk about Top Gun Maverick. You have this, really, for me, and I didn't even watch the old Top Gun movies.
Happy 4th of July.
Oh, happy 4th of July. We're recording on 4th of July.
Yeah.
There's the scene where Tom Cruise goes in the office and it's Val Kilmer. He was the Iceman in the old movies. Again, haven't seen those. But for me, there's this really emotional scene where it's the first time Val Kilmer's on screen, and he reprises this role despite his actual real life like battles with cancer. Or I haven't done a lot of
throat
research
cancer.
On this. It's just seeing that 30-40 seconds on screen of them just kind of like, I don't know, standing there and interacting normally like nothing is going on is a really and it's meant to be emotional. It's meant to pull at your heartstrings because you're like, holy shit, that's him.
Yeah.
But even then, it's nothing compared to holy shit, Caesar.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they and a lot of anime does this. It really does like build strong emotional relationships between men, and I think that's what a lot of American guys see, because like we all live in a very disconnected world. I mean, in a more connected world, this podcast wouldn't exist. We would just sit around and talk about this at a bar with our friends, you know?
Yeah.
But we're losing that. And I think that's why anime is getting popular, because like it has always, you know,
it's relationship focused.
Right. It's always fed those desires of a disconnected people.
Yeah, and
that was kind of a deep tangent.
It was a bit of a deep tangent. But yeah, back to that, like the enemies to friends thing is, you know, it's a trope, you know. It's pretty old, but at the same time, like, there's a reason why it's a trope, and it's because when you do it right, it works. You know, and when you set up two people who are like very different from one another, and they have an adversity at first, but then they kind of realize each other's strengths. Right. That gives you a real deep sense of a bond between them, and it makes the story more compelling.
I also, this is another little thing that I want to bring up. This is one of my favorite Iraqi-isms the first time we're introduced to Caesar, where Joseph is like, what the fuck is this black spaghetti? And you get this little like cutaway of like, it's made with squid ink and we get it from this region, and it's like, oh, and you just see Iraqi's autism flat out on page right there for you, and you just like, I don't know, it's something about it. Every single time he does it, something about it just like brings me more into this world, because it's like, okay, we're still grounded on Earth, and the things on Earth are sometimes just as interesting as magic, sun-breathing, karate. Like,
oh yeah, yeah,
squid ink pasta, that's pretty interesting. I think that's part of why he does it, is to show us, like, you know, sometimes the real world is just as interesting as anything that somebody puts on a page.
Yeah.
So, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. Caesar and Joseph go to this restaurant. They have their little date. They get mad at each other.
Yeah.
And then they go to this island where Lisa is, and she's like, we need to start training. But they're set upon by the Pillar Men.
They initially go to the underground cave where the three Pillar Men are, and where the Nazis are trying to excavate them, essentially. And shit hits the fan immediately, and there's a weird thing that happens. As a screenwriter, I always notice these things, but like on their drive on the way there, they set up the driver of the cab as this guy we're supposed to care about, and then like 20 seconds later he gets killed, cut right in half, and it's like, okay, you literally just got introduced to us so that you could die.
Right, he gets in the car, he drops the, I can't wait to get home to my wife and children. And it just gets obliterated.
It's hilarious. And that's another thing that, you know, Iraqi knowing that the Nazis were bad, but maybe not quite, like, having the cultural understanding of just how awful they were. You know, because, like, you know, you're introduced to this German soldier, you're immediately told to sympathize with him, and then he dies. and he's like used as like a pawn to like further the emotional stakes in the moment, and it's like, but he was also like, you know, he was also probably there on Crystal Knocked, you know.
Do you think we're the bad guys? Jesus.
Yeah. Anyways, that's where they meet Cars, SCDC, and Wamu, who are the three pillar men. Cars is the top one. You know, he's kind of like the leader of the group. And then there's SCDC, who is like, he's the fire guy, right? His deal is fire, and he's like the less honorable one. And then there's Wamu, who has like who gets the more like emotional, you know, I'm a real warrior at heart, and you know, and despite everything, I have a code of honor, you know.
He breaks down crying at some point, doesn't he?
Yeah. Wait.
Is it Wamu or is it Cars?
No, it's SCDC, I believe, is the one who has like the kind of like sporadic, like, you know, big emotional changes. You know, if you're talking about that one scene where JoJo is training and they get set upon by the two pillar men.
Right.
If you're talking about that scene where he has like all these big mood swings, I think that's SCDC, because he's the one who dies at the end.
Right.
So, anyways, the two underlings, SCDC and Wamu, they get inside. I mean, they like put their hands inside JoJo because, you know, their whole deal is now they can like get inside people's bodies.
They just get all up in him. They put their whole arm straight through his chest cavity and fucking implant rings in him that will poison him to death. Yeah.
And, you know, just like two dudes giving a man rings, you know, like pride never stops, I guess.
Ooh, you guys thought Pride Month was over? No way.
No. Fuck no.
Pride year.
This is the future the liberals want. Anyways. Oh, I'm literally looking at the wiki right now, and it says Wedding Ring of Death.
Yep.
That's literally the name.
This is
so
the Wedding Ring of Death.
You know, gay coded, definitely. But anyways, these things are going to dissolve in like 30 days. And so that's when they're like, oh shit, we have to get training now so that we can
meet us at the Coliseum in Rome in 30 days, and we're gonna fuck your shit.
Yep.
Unless you get good. And so Lisa's like, what's the best way to make a guy get good? I know. Throw a mask on him that makes him not be able to breathe, and then put him in a hole. And make the hole covered in oil, and then make him climb up the oil-covered hole.
The oil-covered shaft, you mean?
It's a well, yes.
It's a well.
I mean, I guess it's a shaft. It's like
there's a shaft in the middle,
it's like,
and that they have to climb up.
Lighthouse, but then you flip the lighthouse upside down and put it underground.
Yeah. And that's essentially like their training arc there, where they like learn to get along with each other. Joseph kind of learns to respect Caesar's abilities, and then Caesar's like, oh, this dude's like an improviser. He is really good at just like thinking some shit up on the fly.
He's a bullshitter.
As they're completing training, they beset them before their expected date of the duel, and
rock up early, dishonorably.
Yeah, dishonorably.
Bad.
Which is why I'm trying to remember if Wamu was there at all, because he's, you know, the honor was his whole thing, right?
I think he was going because honor was his whole thing, and AC/DC was gonna fight them early, and he was just gonna like be an oath keeper or something. And
okay.
The dude, like if he went too far, he would stop it or something.
Okay. But anyways, AC/DC gets fucking killed.
He gets his shit rocked.
Getting all the threads around him, and you know, and then like pulls everything and gets all the Hamon through him, you know. So he's the first one to get taken out of those three, and then Wamu is a little bit later, because there's a whole, we're running low on time, but there's a whole thing where they ship off the stone that
the red stone.
Oh, we didn't even get to the stone. So the stone is God, this show is making me feel like a crazy person, but
right. When you explain it to people, there's no way to do it other than sound like a crazy person. But when you're watching it, you're just like, yeah, dude.
Yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, toxic
Yeah.
blood from fucking tentacles. He's just growing now. Yeah, fucking
Yeah.
whatever. He's an immortal demigod. He can evolve at will.
Yeah, but anyways, the long and short of it is that Kars wants the stone because the stone with the mask is gonna make him super powerful, essentially immortal.
Right. The mask was one piece of the puzzle. The
Yeah.
stone is the second piece of the puzzle. Kars is the third piece of the puzzle.
So they ship it off to Switzerland and they track it down, but so do the Nazis. And so there's a big showdown in like the Swiss Alps or whatever, where Kars gets his shit rocked, and Stroheim is now a cyborg.
Oh yeah, Stroheim got his shit rocked at some point. We were like,
Yeah.
oh, thank God the Nazi's dead. Oh,
Yeah.
actually, he's got a machine gun in his chest now. Well, welcome back.
Yep.
He's better than ever.
They trap Kars in like a big cavern down below,
They put him in a hole.
Yeah.
There's a theme here. They like putting... Araki was like, oh, fuck, what do I do? How do I create tension? How do I solve this problem? I know, I'll put him in a hole. They put Santana in a well. They put Joseph and Caesar in a well.
Yep.
They put Kars just down a big hole.
Yeah. And they essentially plan to besiege this this old abandoned hotel that that Kars and Wamu are holed up in. But Caesar, in a fit of vengeance, essentially, because apparently, so his dad got like sucked into the like the Pillar Men sculpture in Italy.
Yes.
Yeah. And so he's like, man, I gotta avenge my dad. So he goes in alone, and he and Wamu duel, and it essentially ends as like it, like Caesar fought honorably, but ultimately he just wasn't ready, and he gets and he dies, but leaves the
He gives his energy and his headband to Joseph in a bubble. No, not
Yep.
his headband, his belt.
Yeah.
His hormone energy and his belt in a bubble.
Yeah.
Just for Joseph.
Yep.
And then he gets smushed by a giant crucifix made of stone.
This show is very
Cold to
subtle.
I cried the first time I saw that. I'm cold to it at this point. I've seen so many memes.
I was
I've
ruined
watched
by
the
the
show so
meme.
many times.
I was ruined by the meme,
I was ruined by the memes.
Anyways, then Lisa and Jonathan, follow him in there. They grieve the death of Caesar, and then they go up to finally confront Wamu and Kars. Kars has now amassed an army of vampires.
Yes.
And Lisa tricks them.
Right.
She's like, don't you guys have any honor or any shit?
Right. It was already 3v2.
No, it's 1 versus 1 and 1 versus 1. Lisa has to fight Kars, and Joseph has to fight Wamu. And so then we get the chariot fight, which like I will say one of the things they really got right this time was they just did a lot better with the action scenes, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also just structured better to give it a better sense of a climax, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. And part of that is the writing, and part of that is the credit of David, because the animation in part 1 is fairly limited.
Yeah.
In part 2, and ever since then, really, with the exception of part 6 in some cases, but they saved a lot of their budget for the end of that. For the most part, it just keeps getting better.
Yeah. The chariot sequence looks pretty good in this.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, and to their credit, like the original opening intro for part 1, which was all CG and stuff, I wasn't a big fan of that. And I can still notice it this time around, but it looks a lot better this time, I think.
Yeah.
Especially because the opener's a little more stylized, and the and this chariot sequence, which is where a lot of the CG comes into place, is a little bit more strategic about how they use it.
I can agree with that. I love all the intros. I love the CG intros. I love and we're getting back to it. It comes back in part 3 and in part 6.
Mm-hmm.
But I see what you mean. Like, but yeah, honest to God, the 3D horses doesn't bother me too much, and we're probably coming back to 3D horses pretty soon if Steel Ball Run's gonna get animated.
JoJo and Wamu duel, and JoJo seems to be getting the shit kicked out of him. You know, he's
getting diced up.
Yeah, like every single decision he makes, he seems to have full confidence in, and then Wamu's like, I saw right through you, buddy. You know, like you picked the fucking hammer, I'm gonna pick up the fucking pole that it was sitting on and just smash you with that. You know, the crossbow thing where he like sends the shot like all the way around through the thing.
I hear people say that like Joseph is not as like, I don't know exactly what the word people use is. I want to say clever, but that's not it. Because like in part 1, Jonathan was really just like flying by the seat of his pants, and he had to come up with some really ingenious ways. So, like, it was all like mind games. But and people say that part 2 is not so much that, and I just don't understand where they're coming from, because it's tuned up to 11. It's all mind games. They're all just fucking with one another, and it's like a series of pranks until somebody actually lands a hit.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Is that like, so the cleverness in part 1 is a little bit more like, there's less of it, and it's put out like a little bit more sparingly, right? Like, you know, whenever JoJo has to do something, it feels more like he makes a last minute decision that really affects things. Right. You know, like
and
when
it's well considered, and he does think it through and explain it then.
Whereas this is a little bit more like, you know, there's a lot more cleverness going on, and everybody's being clever. So it's like, you know, it's a bit cleverness overload sometimes, where it's like, oh, I outthought you, outthinking me, outthinking you. You know, it's I knew you knew I was gonna do that the whole time.
And that's every fight from here on out.
Yeah, like and that's part of what I think the show is getting strong at, is just, you know, like the little, like the mental interplay between things, you know, and that's what it's carrying over from the first season. Though I will say the bigger criticism I have with this season is that, or this arc, I suppose, since it's all one season, but this arc, as opposed to the last one, is that Joseph's motivation is a little less personal, right?
Definitely, yeah. He's a little more disconnected from it, which I think is a lot of people's major criticism of part 2. Because a lot of people really do like the emotional, personal connection from part 1. That's a lot of people's favorite part of part 1.
Yeah.
And you see the character and the attitude turned up a lot, but you do lose out on those emotional, personal stakes.
Yeah. But I think that that's just like a tonal shift between season 1 and season 2 overall. This one's just a lot more like playful and a little more like a little bit looser with the stakes than
it is
season 1, which is very
criticism.
Yeah.
That's mostly a criticism people have coming right off the back of it, because going into part 3 and beyond, like that kind of bleeds away as it becomes a more wholly connected story.
Yeah. Eventually, JoJo does outthink Wamu. There's, you know, he gets defeated, but like, you know, in a very like, you know, soldier's honor kind of way. You know,
right.
You know, I respect you, even though, you know, you were trying to take over the world or whatever, you know. But then there's the fight with Lisa and Cars, and we didn't really get into Lisa very much.
She's his mom.
Yeah. It's weird that they introduced that so late, you know, because again, writer brain in me is like, if I'm writing this and I want to put this this plot twist in, I'm not going to put it at the very end where none of it matters to anything that happens, you know? It's
Right.
like, I actually be like, I would want to put it like somewhere in like the second act where it's actually going to affect what happens in the third.
Right, and this is a very short run, so it's kind of difficult to do that and have it have like serious emotional stakes one way or the other. You see it done fairly successfully in part one, but most of that is just like you're set up from the beginning to hate Dio so much because he throws Danny in a fucking oven. But like in part two, even if you do say, okay, well, here's Joseph, and then like 2 episodes later you introduce Lisa, and then even 2 episodes after that you say Lisa's actually his mom this whole time. Like, does that really do much for us?
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to like say they need to do something with it, but like, it's a weird detail to add and then never have it do anything like functionally for the plot, you know? Like, it just doesn't affect anything whatsoever. It's a very odd addition, and on top of that, like, it kind of makes all of Joseph's, like, you know, all of the kind of pervy ways he's been acting towards her before that, it kind of gives it like a, you know, a weird Luke and Leia kind of flavor afterwards, which is already pretty bad, and it makes it
already
worse.
Like, why are you looking through the keyhole, my dude? And then it's like, oh wait, that's your mom, bro. Yeah. Even then, Lisa's a badass. I like Lisa as a character. I think she's cool. I think initially, like, when it happens, the shock value is kind of there, because it's like, oh! But beyond that, it's like, that plot point doesn't do much in service of the story.
Yeah. And I think that the way that the ending treats her in general is a little bit odd, because there's that, and also, like, she never really gets her own proper fight scene, right? Like, you know,
she's kind of off in the background whenever she's fighting cars.
And to be fair, that's not very odd for sensei characters, right? Like, you know, if you have like Master Splinter in a Ninja Turtles movie, you know, he maybe gets like one little fight scene, and then it's like, okay, Grandpa's done, you know.
I don't remember Grandpa Gohan throwing hands too often.
Yeah, but at the same time, the show just kind of positions her a little differently, and I think as the first, like, you know, the first actually compelling female character of the show, the fact that they kind of build her up to this fight, and then, you know, immediately just go like, oh, well, she underestimated him, she gets stabbed, and now she's out for the rest of the finale, essentially. It's a little bit disappointing, you know?
It's underwhelming.
Especially for a character who has so much cool and so much, you know.
It is, and it's kind of a shame that he almost wrote himself into a hole with that one, because, like, you have to have main character of the part beat main bad guy of the part.
Yeah.
In a shonen manga, you have to have main character of the arc beat main bad guy of the arc. It's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah. But they could have even given her, like, they could have even had, like, you know, this fight scene go on way longer, and then she underestimates him and gets stabbed. So we get best of both worlds. But, like, yeah, I kind of get it, but it's also a little disappointing.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who wish there was more of part 2.
Yeah.
I think if there was as much of part 2 as there is of part 3, it would be a lot more interesting. And I don't know if necessarily Araki was skillful enough or confident enough to try and pull that off at that point. And he's certainly never going to go back at this point and, you know, amend. But in a different universe, we wish.
Yeah, I don't expect him to, but, like, it's a little bit disappointing that because of the length of the show and because of the plot points it needs to get to, it loses out a little bit on some of these interesting things that could have happened. But it's not the end of the world.
Right,
in general, I think the
show held up by really strong characters and a really interesting, like, chase, I guess,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term.
Yeah, like, I think that overall this part is a little better than Phantom Blood, even though, like, Phantom Blood does a lot of the important, like, setting up of things, you know, and that should give it a lot of credit.
Right.
But
We're being more harsh on this, but it's more fun.
yeah. And also, like, a lot of the things that we were saying about last time still apply to this time, you know, like, you know, all the voice acting is pretty good. When Stroheim is, like, you know, initially introduced and he's like a fucking maniac, all of him, like, you know, screaming and saying shit really weirdly, like, you know.
The finest German engineering! Just like, you know.
Yeah, all that shit is fun. Like, it... And the music this time around, I actually noticed, is a little bit better. Like, it's a little less just, like, you know, kind of generic 18th century gothic fantasy thing. And it's got a lot of, like, interesting, like, you know, EDM and rock and even a bit of dubstep going on in there. Which, you know, dubstep's a bit controversial, but I like it sometimes. Especially when it's just, like, a flavor in a show's soundtrack rather than, like, you know...
Dedicated listening.
Yeah. And I actually noticed that, like, there's a riff that happens sometimes that sounds a lot like Yes's Owner of a Lonely Heart, which is a callback to the closing song in every episode.
I'm sure you're right about this.
I literally heard it. It was like, bah, 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 bah. You know?
Yeah.
It would happen every once in a while. It wasn't like a big element, but, you know, it would happen especially whenever JoJo was like, haha, I've got you now, you know? It would go, bah, 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 and
Next
I'm like,
you're gonna say...
JoJo seemingly defeats Cars in this big battle, in this, like, dilapidated coliseum. Stroheim is about to like blast him with this big ultraviolet ray to basically like kill him and all the other vampires.
The sun cannon.
Yeah, it's the sun cannon essentially. But then it turns out Cars had somehow got the red stone.
He already got it.
And he puts it in the mask, and then when Stroheim blasts him with the ultraviolet thing, it all goes into the mask. And essentially does the bad thing that he wanted to do all along, which is make himself immortal and, you know, essentially allow him to shapeshift into anything that he wants.
Right, now he can actually evolve at will and grows wings and becomes a real menace for about 2 chapters.
I think that it's way better than the ending of part 1. Part 1 gets some, I was a bit harsh on it last time, but, like, it gets a little bit of credit for having the kind of coda at the end where Jonathan sacrifices himself, but like, you know, my gripe still stands that like, you know, with the you know, the Jonathan Dio thing being such a tight, like, you know, such a tight conflict that it needed a bit of a bigger resolution. But this is like, it does the thing that I really love about good American blockbusters, especially stuff that James Cameron makes, which is like, there's the final battle.
Purpose.
No, not just that, but like, there's the final battle, you think everything's over, then everything gets taken up another notch, and you essentially have like a 4th act that's like, oh no, this is the actual final battle, you know? I always love that shit.
It's the second phase in the Elden Ring boss.
Exactly. It's the second phase thing. I love it. It's my favorite thing in the whole world. JoJo essentially like tries running it first, but that's not going to get him anywhere because now cars can fly. We have flying cars now. You know. Welcome to the future.
We live in a world of flying cars. Somehow, some way, this battle ends up on top of a fucking volcano.
What happens is JoJo gets a Nazi plane and flies, and essentially has Cars follow him.
Star's first plane crash.
I mean, it might be a bit of a stretch to say how does he know how to fly a plane, but also like, he's 19 and he's also part of like a rich family, so maybe he's been flying planes recreationally in his spare time. Who knows?
Fly. Well, here's the thing. I can pretty confidently fly a plane. The landing part is what I'm not so sure
That's
about.
tough.
Which is what he also doesn't do.
At first he attempts to he essentially hits Cars and is like, okay, now you're on the nose of this thing and I'm gonna send you into the volcano and we're both gonna die together. You think it's going to be a retread of the first one, essentially. Stroheim is there, he's stowed away, and he's like, hey, JoJo, gotta jump now, and so they both jump, and Stroheim essentially like protects JoJo by using his robotic legs to break their fall, which, like, okay, let me tell you right now, have you ever seen the video that's like how to survive falling out of a plane? Have you ever seen this video? It's like a 3-minute video.
No.
It's actually really good advice, by the way. If you ever are falling out of a plane, land on your legs, right? Your legs will break. They will definitely break, but it might break or fall enough for you to survive. Just letting you know. Yeah, like, obviously if you can also like land in some trees or something to help you like slow your descent initially, that helps as well. Also, like, flattening out your body while you're falling to, like, slow yourself down. Anything you can do to slow yourself down before hitting the ground is helpful, but, like, once you actually get to the ground, you want to land on your legs, because those things will break, but it'll decelerate the important parts of your body.
I really hope I'm never in that position, Josh.
But it's good advice,
It is good advice. I'm glad I know.
Anyways, back to the Nazi.
It's like oh yeah, you're supposed to roll your window down if you drive your car off a bridge and into a body of water, or for some reason, a second aquatic example, punch a shark in the nose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might never be in that situation, but it's really good to know if you are. Anyways, so now JoJo and Stroheim are in the volcano, right? And they're like, fuck yeah, we're melting him. He's fucking dying. Somehow, Cars survives.
He's immortal. What do you mean, somehow?
Well, like, so their initial idea is like, okay, the lava is going to like melt every single cell in his body, so he's gonna die, right? Like, he just won't have the time to regenerate, But then Cars is like, okay, if I essentially like create like an aerated membrane around my body, which I can do apparently.
I can evolve instantaneously to breathe through every pore in my body and then just blow.
Yeah. And that's going to dissipate enough of the energy in my body that I can go through the lava, cut into the rock and sneak attack JoJo.
Which he does.
Yeah, he does. JoJo's arm gets cut off, and essentially at this point it's like, fuck you. I'm immortal. You're fucking gone, dude. And then just when he's about to fucking Biden blast JoJo like reactionarily like holds up the stone. It amplifies the beam that the hormone beam that that Cars is using. And it fucking blows up the mountain and sends JoJo and Cars sky high.
Sends them into space.
Sends Cars into space. JoJo manages to fall back down.
Not go into space.
Yeah, and
so this is actually very important, Josh.
Yeah.
Because now there are 36 cars on Mars. That's real and true, and no, fuck you, I'm not explaining it. Go read George Joestar.
I was told that he wasn't going to come back, but,
36 cars on Mars, that's all I'm saying.
Google 36 cars on Mars for more information.
That's all you gotta do. Google 36 cars on Mars, you'll figure it out. There's a book. There's a book called George Joestar. That is the second most important piece of information that I just gave you. Google either one of those things, you'll get there.
Yeah, but essentially, everybody at this point thinks that JoJo sacrificed himself to to kill cars.
He sacrifices himself to kill cars, and they have a whole funeral, and Irina is there, and Lisa is there, and Caesar wishes he was there, and and
essentially the whole gang's there, and then
Smokey Brown is there, and then the ghost of Joseph rocks up. Except actually,
he's alive.
It's not the ghost of
somehow JoJo survived.
JoJo himself is here, and he immediately hooks up with Susie Q. Let's go. And they get hitched.
No, they get married off screen before he even goes to his own funeral. Like, funerals usually happen pretty soon after somebody's death, right? Like within a week or two, right?
Generally.
That means that this guy not only got rescued, brought back to Italy, nursed back to health, and then married before his own funeral.
And who rescued him, Josh? None other than the fucking Speedwagon Foundation.
That's right. We didn't talk about oil tycoon Speedwagon, did we?
Robert E.O. Speedwagon will do anything for the Joestar family.
Yeah, but he's now fucking Standard Oil, though, so I hate him.
He's not BP. He hasn't had an oil spill.
I guess not. Not that we know of.
British Petroleum. That's what BP stands for, by the way.
Yeah, in case you didn't know.
So so what we need to do is we need to have another we need to have another Boston Harbor where we dump all the BP products into the Boston Harbor.
I think that's going to present a lot of unintended consequences. You're a bit confused, but you got the spirit.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, anyways, so unlike last part, this one kind of ends very decisively, you know, like there's a little bit of setup afterwards where it's like, JoJo's in an airport or whatever, and he references that he's had a child or a grandkid or something, and that's the end of it, you know. But like, this one ends a lot more decisively than the last one, which is like, okay, Irina's in a boat now.
Yeah.
What the fuck's gonna happen now?
It leaves a lot less questions, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Which I think is probably why when they animated this and they put it out, and because both parts are so short, I think that's probably why they pushed it as one season.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does kind of wrap this story, and kind of at that time, a lot of people saw part 1 and 2 more of as a prequel, like optional reading. There was a big community drama, at least on online JoJo fans that I was aware of like part skippers and people being like angry or upset or, you know, etc., etc. Don't skip parts. You can't be a part skipper. Whatever. Skip parts 1 and 2. Part 3 is where it gets good.
Yeah.
Watch JoJo's is all I gotta say. But I was not a part skipper.
But
I watched
part 1 and part 2 are worth it to me, I think. Right?
Absolutely, in my opinion.
Especially for a lot of the context you get for later stuff, because like I don't imagine they re-explain Hamon in the next one, and that's probably going to be pretty important if you want to understand any of this. You know, I mean, maybe they switch things up a little bit, but like Hamon's still going to be an element, right? No? Why are you smiling like that?
Josh?
Yeah?
This is, you're not running a bit at me right now, right? You really don't know?
I don't know, dude. I mean, I know what stands are, but I don't know what I guess there is a new magic system that I'm not aware of yet.
It stands, baby.
Okay.
It stands, and it's only stands. And
Thanks.
Stands are here.
Thanks for being like so fucking quiet to me and making me ramble about shit I didn't know about. Thanks a lot.
No, I mean, well, that's the thing. That's part of the experience. Is everybody was like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wonder where Hamon's gonna go. I wonder what we're gonna do next. I wonder how this is gonna evolve. And you'll get the answer to that question pretty quickly into watching part 3.
Okay. Cool. So speaking of which, on August 9th, we're picking back up with JoJo's. We're doing Stardust Crusaders is the next arc.
Stardust Crusaders, baby.
Episodes 1 through 24.
And y'all better show the fuck up.
Yeah,
for
show up.
Part 3. Y'all, I swear to God, every motherfucker I hear say, JoJo's Part 3 is my favorite. I better see you 2 months in a row, bad boy.
Yeah, show up, you know, tell us what you think on social media or in the Q&A section down here, or send us an email if you don't have any of those things for some godforsaken reason, you know. It's all at howtootakupod, howtootakupod@gmail.com, all of it, you know. Anyways, that's going to be on August 9th is when we're starting Stardust Crusaders, and then next episode is...
Before then.
Yep, the next episode, July 22nd, we're doing Delicious in Dungeon, Dungeon Meshi, which is all on Netflix. So,
all
you know,
on Netflix. Season 1 is out, and it's 20-something episodes.
Yeah,
so...
something like that. I'm looking forward to it because it just seems like I've been seeing a lot of memes about it, actually. And
I personally haven't started it yet, and now I've gotten in the habit of swiping past the memes that I've seen because like, I don't want to spoil myself. But
so far as I've seen, there's no like spoiler memes. It's just like, oh, look at what this character is cooking. It's something funny or some shit. You know, fucking Delicious in Dungeon meets steamed hams or whatever. You know.
Oh my god, steamed hams was a fucking era of the internet.
It was. But that's our schedule essentially is July 22nd, Delicious in Dungeon, August 9th, Stardust Crusaders Part 1. That's what you got to know. And you can watch all those on Netflix. You know, this show is sponsored by Netflix, I suppose, you know.
We better be.
I would hope that they would at least pay for our subscriptions. For us, you know, how much we're promoting their shit.
Several months of free promotion now. Hey guys,
buy
Netflix. You can watch all this cool
Give money. Give me money. Give me money, okay?
Give me money. I've been doing job applications this entire time, and I'm gonna continue to do job applications while I'm watching Delicious in Dungeon. So Netflix. Yeah. I have a communications degree from the University of Georgia. Hit me up.
Yeah, you're gonna be the guy who's running Geeked on Twitter or whatever. You know, you're gonna be the guy posting all the cringiest memes.
I can solve your personal relation problems and your community relation problems. I know the answer. And for a modest salary, I will tell you how to fix your platform and tell people to not hate you anymore.
Man.
Think about it.
Think about it. Just think about it, all right?
Think about it. That's a pretty good, I'd say that's a pretty good job proposition right there.
Yeah. Just to reiterate, How to Otaku Pod on all socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I need to get back to posting TikToks, man. You know.
And not for much longer. Come on, man.
I want to utilize it while we still have it, you know.
Just
but
milk that almond.
That's right. Anything you want to plug or nope?
That's it, baby.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Until then.
See you, Space Cowboy.